Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Christopher Kraus, your Learning and Development Specialist here at Embraer North America, and we are really excited to have the part two of cross-cultural awareness. Now, let me go through some housekeeping first before I introduce our guest speaker. First is, as always, make sure that your mics are muted, and it looks like everyone's video is disabled, so thank you for doing that. But if you have your mic on, make sure that you mute it. The session is being recorded. At some point next week, we'll be able to upload all of this information into Empower for people to see. And we will, as always, have a Q&A at the end of the session. So if you have questions along the way, make sure to make note of them. And then once the Q&A is open, we're going to be using the chat section of Teams since we have so many people on the call today. And we will have a post-session survey that'll go out right after this session is over. I ask that you just take 2 or 3 minutes, give us your feedback. We'd love to hear what you think of the session, of the program in general, and we always like to hear what other topics you'd like to see in the future. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today, Paulo Ribeiro. He is our head of safety for North America. Paulo, as always, it's great to have you here.
Thanks so much, Chris, and welcome everybody to a part two of this training. Hopefully you watched the session on Friday. If you haven't, you're gonna have a chance when this is uploaded to the whatever, I don't know where it stays, but wherever it's uploaded.
Empower.
I would strongly suggest that if you haven't watched the Friday's session, go back after and watch them one after the other so you have a good idea of what we're talking about here, okay? You're gonna get it midway to the end of the training if you haven't attended the last meeting. So let's start here. Of course, we are having these as a virtual session because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Light is at the end of the tunnel. I hope it's not an incoming train. So hopefully we're going to turn the page on 2020 and get a fresh start in 2021. Hopefully 2020 is going to have only 12 months and not 18. Quick recap of what we saw on Friday. If you remember, I mentioned that culture is brain wiring, meaning that when you're born, you're going to be programmed to act and react or to survive in your own culture. There's no right or wrong in culture. Whatever is right to you might be wrong to somebody else and vice versa. So we like to say that things are just different culture-wise. We form a pattern, a palette, meaning that we are not the same. We are not, I'm not like any other Brazilian. You cannot just generalize like that. But we stand strong in a group. So I follow a backbone of my own culture, just like you guys do. So when we are comparing cultures, we are actually comparing different palettes. Looks can deceive. Be careful with that. People travel a lot nowadays. There are a lot of mixing between cultures. People might look like you, but they might not be like you, or they might look very different from you, and they might be just like your own culture. Communication is key in culture and cross culture. So be careful with the way you communicate with your different culture peers and assess the differences. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to concentrate on this. We're going to focus on the Brazilian, the American culture for obvious reasons. This is a strong Brazilian company operating in the US. So we're going to compare these two major groups. If you're not from one of those cultures, don't worry because you're going to be dealing with the Americans and the Brazilians. So this is going to be useful for you as well. So if you remember, I brought to you last time 3 models from the 3 biggest masterminds in cultural studies. First one, Richard Luce. Second one, Dr. Hofstede. And third one, Ari Meyers. Dr. Luce wrote this book. It's one of his books. He has many books. This is his main book on culture. So I strongly suggest that you buy it, rent it, whatever, read it. If you remember, he divided the cultures into three major groups: the multi-active, the reactive, and the linear active. These are the keys for you to read the groups. So the multi-active are warm, emotional, loquacious, impulsive. The yellow group, the reactive, are courteous, friendly, accommodating, compromiser, good listeners. And the linear active people are cool, factual, decisive planners. Of course, you have a myriad of places where the culture can be. You might have a culture which is a mix of two major groups. Guys, sorry if you hear a lawnmower in the background here. These guys, they can read my mind. So every time I have an important meeting, they come and blow the leaves or whatever. So Dr. Lewis, after he plots where the culture is, he has many ways of comparing them. So you can compare how they do things differently. Dr. Hofstede created a second, he had a different approach. He created 6 dimensions. If you remember, we have power distance, individualism, masculinity, uncertainty avoidance, pragmatism, and indulgence. So if you go read his book, you're gonna have a very good description of each one of these 6 dimensions before you can start comparing different cultures. And then we have Harry Mayers with 8 dimensions of cultural difference, communicating, which goes from a low context to a high context. Low context means I say things at face value. What I say is what I mean. High context means you're going to have to grasp what I mean by what I said. Evaluating direct negative feedback versus indirect negative feedback. Persuading, principles first, applications first. Principles first means the basis of what you're saying versus the other group that goes to the application. It doesn't matter where the thing came from. Leading, egalitarian versus hierarchical. Deciding from consensual to top-down. Trusting with a task-based to relationship-based, meaning that some people trust the skills that you have, where others will trust the relationship that they have with you. Disagreeing, going from a confrontational to non-confrontational, and scheduling linear time versus flexible time. People that are sharp on time all the time versus people that are more flexible there with their time. So let's use these three models to compare our cultures. Okay, let's start with Dr. Lewis with the 3 main groups and people all over the place there. And you're gonna see that the Brazilians are very multi-active, just like many of the Latin cultures, meaning that we are warm, emotional, loquacious, impulsive. Do you have any idea where the US is gonna fall? Try to guess. In 3, 2, 1. Let's see everybody here. Aha. The US is very close to a perfect linear active culture, meaning that you're cool, factual, decisive planners. Take a look at China. They are on the reactive side of the pyramid, meaning that they are courteous, friendly, accommodating, compromisers, good listeners. Do you see the distance between Brazil and China? It is the same as Brazil and US, meaning that we are much different from Americans as we Brazilians are from the Chinese. On the other hand, the Americans are as different from the Brazilians as they are from the Japanese, for instance. They're right there in the lower corner or lower right corner next to Vietnam. So you can see that we are very different. How we are different, you ask. So these are some of the ways. I plotted here Brazil, the US, and China just to get another example of the other end of the pyramid there, the triangle. So I'm not going to go through all of these, of course, here today. Dr. Lewis has like 40 or 50 ways where people are different, right? Cultures are different. I just grabbed the ones that I thought were more significant to us. So let's say, for instance, let's get the first line. Americans talk half the time. Brazilians talk most of the time. We love to talk. Americans rarely interrupt. Brazilians, we interrupt because overlapping our speech is not a lack of education or is not impolite or anything. That's how we communicate. We often interrupt people when they are speaking. Americans confront their problems with logic, whereas Brazilians, we are more emotional. Americans do one thing at a time. That's why you are linear active. We do several things at once. That means that we might take a little longer than you guys to finish, but we're going to finish more stuff at the end of the day, or we're going to finish the same amount of stuff, but in a different way. We're going to work on all of them at the same time, whereas the Americans are going to work on one and then the other and then the other. So you can read Dr. Dewey's book and take a look at things here that are different. I'm not going to go over all of them here. We're going to take a look and see the main characteristics of the cultures a little later, and I'm going to probably mention some of them here, okay? Second way here to compare, Dr. Hofstade's model, power distance. The Americans score 40. This goes from 0 to 100. And Brazilians score 69, meaning that we have much more power distance to our bosses than the Americans do. Brazilians respect their bosses a lot more than Americans do. It's not that Americans don't respect their bosses, but it's okay for you to get to your boss and say, hey, I don't think this is going to work. I think this is wrong or whatever. In Brazil, they have a hard time doing that. So it's different. And bosses, on the other hand, they also expect to be more respected down in Brazil. It's the distance is far greater than here in the US. Talking about individualism, Americans are the most individualistic society scored by Dr. Hofstade. So he hasn't scored anything beyond 91, and that's Americans. Brazilians, on the other hand, are very collectivistic, meaning that people like to work in groups. They like to collaborate. They like to share the success and the failures. Americans are more, this is me, this is my job, I'm gonna do it. If it's right, fine. If it's not right, tell me. So they are more individualistic. Masculinity is not that much different. If you remember, masculinity doesn't have anything to do with macho culture or anything. Brazilians are more, I wouldn't say more feminine because you score 49, so it's kind of halfway. The Americans are more masculine, meaning that you praise more achievement, heroism, and things like that. Brazilians, just because we are less individualistic and we're more collectivistic, we also praise more the well-being of society rather than individual achievements. Uncertainty avoidance, Brazilians score a lot higher than Americans do, meaning that we are not risk takers. So you're going to see some Brazilians that are reluctant to start doing something because they need to assess the risks first. They need to see the big picture. They need to see the plan. They need to see all the steps that they're going to have to do before they jump in that project or whatever. Americans are more, let's do it. If it doesn't work, we're going to do it again and again and again until we get right. If you watched last week's Starship launch in Texas, it failed. And Elon Musk has failed many, many times. He's not afraid of sending rockets up and blowing them up. That's the American culture, even though he's a South African, but he was raised here in the US. So that's a trace of the American culture. Brazilians are more reluctant to take risks. Pragmatism may come as a surprise to many Americans. You are very low in pragmatism, meaning that Americans are much more tied to their traditions than Brazilians are. Brazilians, we do have our traditions. We score 44. We don't score 60 or anything like that. We do have our traditions, but we may disrespect them more often than the Americans do. Here in the US, you have a lot of traditions for everything. The Second Amendment that was written centuries ago, and the way you conduct the transition of power that we are talking about right now, all of these are traditions. And we saw a lot during the last presidency that a lot of these traditions were broken, and people got uncomfortable with that. So that's something that Americans do. You have a low score in pragmatism. Indulgence, pretty much the same. We like to be indulged after we did something right. We like to be complimented. We like to have the tap on the back and things like that. We like to have the prize at the end of a good day of work. Harry Mayer's model, if you remember here, the 8 scales. So let's take a look at them. Communicating, how do we score? Americans are very, very low context communicators. Brazilians are more to the high context style, meaning that if you have a Brazilian peer saying, yeah, I think that's a good idea, you gotta get the nuance of how he's saying that, because it might mean, yeah, I hate that idea. I don't like it. Americans are more straightforward. I like it. I like it. If I don't like it, I'll say I don't like it. Evaluating. Americans are a little bit more direct in their negative feedback. Brazilians, because we are more collectivistic, we don't like to make enemies or have people that don't like us. So we're gonna have a less direct negative feedback. We're gonna lean towards the indirect negative feedback. Persuading. Americans are very applications first. Brazilians, we are more principles first. So an example here, right? That's an example that I always mention during the trainings. I had at some point a team of people coming here to deliver a presentation to one of our customers, and I told them, guys, bring the big buck. Tell them how many million of dollars they're gonna save with this program. Don't come here telling the Embraer story and oh, we started back in 1960 something and then we built the Bandeirante and all that stuff. Go straight to the money saving because that's the application of what you are trying to bring here. They didn't do that because we're more principles first. So they came with that boring presentation, boring in the American sense, presentation with the story of Embraer and other products and how the program began and the issues that we faced and everything. So different approach. It doesn't always work like that. So we gotta adapt to the other culture when you're doing these cross-culture businesses. Leading, Brazilians are more hierarchical. Remember that I mentioned on the other model that Brazilians have a higher power distance. That's what I meant. We are more hierarchical, meaning that bosses are very powerful down in Brazil. In the US, they are powerful as well. They have the power of the position, but they are open to hearing their teams and everything. In Brazil, not always. The boss will sometimes make a decision that goes against what everybody else in the team said or thought. So we are more hierarchical. At the end of the day, bosses are going to make the decision. That's what this scale here is telling us. Deciding half conceptual, half top down. But it's going to be the decision of the boss. Trusting, you have the task-based for the Americans versus a very distant relationship-based for the Brazilians. If you're an American boss and you're going to hire somebody, you're going to want to hire the person who has the perfect skills, a person that have already accomplished that in the past, a person that have the capacity to do the job. In Brazil, we're going to hire the people that we get along with. The rest is going to come at some point. So we might have to train that person and things like that, but we're going to see how much empathy we have with that person, how much alignment. That's a word that you're gonna hear a lot in the Brazilian vocabulary. Alignment. That means I'm gonna have to like you if I want to do business with you. Green, Americans are more confrontational. That goes together with the direct negative feedback as well. So Americans are more confrontational, Brazilians are more non-confrontational. So Americans are not afraid of arguing if they want to argue to make their point. Brazilians, we're gonna try to be more political. Again, try not to make enemies. Scheduling, Americans are more linear with their time. So you have a time to start something and you have a time to finish something. Brazilians are more flexible with their time. You saw that our session today started sharp at 1. Chris started talking at 1. If this was done in Brazil, I would have to wait until 5 minutes pass, 10 minutes pass, until everybody showed up. That's how it is down there. We are working a lot with, when I say we, I mean the Brazilians, sorry. Brazilians are working a lot with the Americans because of all the business that we have here. So that might not happen when you are getting to a meeting with the guys down in Brazil. But if the meeting is only with Brazilians, yeah, there's gonna be some delay in starting the meeting. Sometimes there's not gonna be a fixed time to end the meeting. There are meetings that start at 1 and they go to 1:30, 1:40 until they decide that, okay, it's time to finish the meeting. It's not like here in the West where things are more linear. You can start the meeting at 1 and hopefully the meeting will end at 2 sharp. Whatever you're comparing and whatever model you're using, you got to have in mind that this is relative. So whatever you might be saying about the Brazilians, oh, the Brazilians are lazy because they get late to the meeting. No, that's not the case. It's just a cultural thing. Whatever you're saying about the Brazilians, the Germans might be saying about you. Here in the US, you have a meeting start at 1, you show up at 1. The Germans will show up 15 minutes before because if the meeting will start at 1, you got to be prepared when the meeting starts. So when Germans have meeting with the Americans, they will say the same thing. They'll say, "Oh, Americans are lazy. The meeting will start at 1, and they don't show up until it's right there 1." So bear that in mind. Whatever you're comparing your culture with the other culture, bear in mind that somebody else might be doing the same thing, comparing their culture with yours. So these are the 3 models that I brought you today. What do I think about them? Dr. Hofstede's model is very brainy, very academic. I don't like to use it that much. I would resort to it if I had a lot of time and if I was willing to try and interpret all these scales here. Pragmatism, what is pragmatism? Let me go to the dictionary. Let me take a look at some examples. So it's brainy. It demands more work if you want to use it, but it's good. Lewis, on the other hand, it's a very quick, very fast model to use. So I'm going to have somebody showing up in my office tomorrow, a Japanese delegation. I can get this model and I can take a look and see that Japan is down there, Brazil is up there, and I can compare our cultures and see where the differences are. And I can prepare for that. So it's very easy to use and very fast. However, I think that Harry Myers is the best model for business. If you take a look at these 8 scales, communicating, evaluating, persuading, leading, deciding, trusting, disagreeing, and scheduling, these translate directly into business. This is what we do on a business relation. So I think that's the best model to be used in an industry. If you want to get the best view of everything, read the 3 books, use the 3 models. Okay? So let's take a look at some key characteristics of our 2 major cultures, Brazilians and Americans. Let's start with the Americans. Bear in mind that this is the palette of the Americans. There are some studies saying that Americans have 9 cultures inside the US. Okay, it's fair, it's precise and everything. But remember, if you take an American out of the US and put him in Paris, he's going to be a perfect American in the French view. So French are going to see Americans as one thing. We know that there are differences between the Texans and the Floridians, for instance, but it's not that big of a difference. It's more subtle. So we're going to be comparing palettes here, okay? Individualism, if you remember, the Americans scored as the most individualistic society in the world. Take a look at this piece of advertisement here. Most job training teaches you how to make something. Mine taught me what I'm made of. It's an army of one. This is kind of unthinkable in Brazil, for instance. We are more collectivistic. We score 38 there in the individualism category. So here in the US, it's very common to say that, oh, there's no I in team. We have to work together. There is always an I in team. It's just hidden. That's just you guys saying, but you don't mean it. That's why this is the culture of the heroes. If you think carefully, you're gonna see that a hero is a person who has the perfect skills. He's gonna be the guy that or the girl that is gonna save the day and solve the situation, and he's gonna capture all the bandits before Gotham police shows up. So that's the American culture. That's the American way of being. It's not surprised that all of these heroes were invented here in the West. It's very hard to find this hero thing in our culture.
What have we here? Another random school of fish. Watch as they mimic each other's every move. Even their own mothers can't tell these fish apart. In this there is no room for individualism. These fish live in fear.
So that's the American culture. Be the shark, don't be the fish. Brazilians are more be the fish, don't be the shark. And that goes along with the competitiveness of the American culture. Everything in the US becomes a competition. If you don't trust me, just sit and watch TV. There's no subject that you can't make a competition out of. Even losing weight is a competition. Singing, selling real estate, everything is a competition. So Americans are very competitive. Because of that, they praise their personal competence. They have a lot of pride in their personal competence, professionalism, and accountability. So managers are only approached, like the slide says here, to help in essential situations. So if you do something, you don't want to go to your boss all the time to ask, hey, should I do this or should I do that? It's your independence, your competence. You're going to do it the best you can. Brazilians, we like to hear what the boss has to say because of the hierarchy and our power distance. The trusting style of the Americans is trust from the head. Like I said, Americans trust people based on what they can accomplish, their proven record, skills, reliability, consistency, intelligence, transparency. Let's take a look at how this plays, how all these traits plays. Let's take this press release. I got this from the internet back in 2015. And this is something that I got the way it is here. I didn't change anything. Let's read two paragraphs of this press release. Just so if you guys don't know, CFM is a company that makes aircraft engines, and they were making aircraft engines for the Chinese program. So here's a guy saying, delivery of this engine paves the way for final assembly and rollout of the first C919 aircraft later this year. This is the Chinese guy saying. We have been very pleased with CFM's efficient management, strong technology, and professionalism. In addition, the candid collaboration and deep friendship that has developed between the COMAC and CFM teams resulted in a very smooth joint program. So this guy is talking about management, professionalism, collaboration, friendship, smooth work, harmony between the teams. Then comes the American saying, it is a great day for the LEAP engine and CFM, said Alan Paxson, Executive Vice President of CFM International. This engine is a combination of more than 6 years of hard work between the CFM and COMAC teams and represents the launch of the next exciting phase of the C919 aircraft development. We are honored to be a part of this great program. This guy is talking about hard work, aircraft development, accomplishment and continuation of the program. So you have two paragraphs, one after the other, which are very clear when you read them with the cultural lenses. The first guy there, the guy on top, he's talking about harmony between the teams, friendship. The second one, I don't care about your friendship. This is business. So that's the difference in styles. If you're not careful enough, this partnership might not work. One wants one thing, the other one thinks he's going to get another thing. Americans are blunt communicators, and they communicate with a low context style. So they communicate meaning and information explicitly. So you deal with the conflict directly and openly. Like I said, if you don't like it, you say no. They don't hesitate to say no. Take a look at the advertisements. Dunkin' Donuts talking bluntly about Starbucks. There are no two trucks here. This is just a painting on the FedEx truck. And the war of the burgers. Silly Whopper, that's a Big Mac box. These pieces of advertisement would be forbidden, prohibited in Brazil, because it's against our ethics in advertisement. But here in the West, it's commonplace. Americans give more indirect negative feedback, and normally with a sandwich approach, as we call it, meaning that you're gonna give a lot of praise, then you're gonna talk about the criticism that you wanted to say in the very first place. That's what matters. And then you're gonna end up with more praise. That's the sandwich approach. Like in this case here. You really did an excellent job with that, treating people fairly essay. Everybody has been very impressed. In the future, it would be better to avoid naming people that haven't accepted all the methods you outlined. It's great that you put so much thought into this, and a lot of people are going to benefit from it. This is praise, useless praise in other cultures, not in the American sense. Then comes the meat. This is what you wanted to say. Some cultures are going to go straight to that. Then I'm going to start with the compliments. And this is more praise. And you can see that if you watch one of those TV shows like Dancing with the Stars or whatever. You see the people saying, hey, you're dressed very nice today. I love your dress. I love your outfit. And yeah, you made some mistakes when you did that step or whatever. But go there. Go get it, Tyler. So you have a lot of praise. Then you have the criticism. That's what matters. And then you have more praise at the end. So that's the American style. Another thing about the Americans is that titles are seldom used in business environments. So take a look at this. 12 factors to consider when hiring a head of sales. You talk about a lot about the head of sales. Here in the US, I am the head of safety.
You start needing cash.
So here in the US, you have the figure of the head. I'm the head of safety. That means that I'm the guy that's going to solve your problem. If you have anything to do with the safety, so if you have a safety concern or safety matter to discuss, I'm the guy that's going to solve your problem. But that doesn't tell much to the Brazilians. We like to have the positions. Americans call each other by their first names, many times a nickname, and this is not a sign of familiarity. In Brazil, it is. So if you have Anthony going to Brazil and he says, oh, no, you can call me Tony. Brazilians are going to think that, oh, he wants to make friends with me. He wants to be my friend. Hey, Tony, and they're going to start hugging the guy. That's not what you wanted. You like to use nicknames as an abbreviation. You have Dave in your business cards. You have Will. Nobody knows William Smith, Will Smith. So that's not common in Brazil. You're never going to see somebody using a nickname in a business card. Like in this case, Tim Cook of Apple seeks to quell China fears in email to Jim Cramer. Their names, Timothy Cook and James Cramer. So we have a hard time, Brazilians have a hard time understanding these. Even they don't stop to think about that. That's the thing. So we normally, when somebody says, okay, you don't need to call me James, call me Jim, we're going to think that, okay, this guy wants to be my friend. He wants to be a close friend to me. Time is money. here in the US. So you praise promptness, punctuality, uninterrupted meeting flow, deadlines, and work is at the center of the Americans' lives. So you have a clear distinction between work colleagues and friends. That's kind of hard to have in Brazil. If you work for 10 years with a person, you probably have gone on a vacation with that person. You go to his or her house and you have dinner together and you make friends with your peers. Here in the US, you have people that work 15, 20 years alongside each other, and they barely know each other out of the work context. That's another example of leaving to work. How many vacation days did you take in 2014? And I bet nowadays it's not that different. 41.8% of Americans took no vacation days in 2014. So work is at the center of your lives. This is the mandatory vacation days. There's no mandate here in the US. If a company doesn't want to give you any paid vacation time, they can. It may take vacations, but it's going to be unpaid. So what happens is that people don't take vacations. But it's mandatory in many other countries, including Brazil. We have 30 days vacation time in Brazil. Americans are very applications first. So the focus is on the end result, the application of whatever you're trying to sell them. And Americans are more interested in their future than your past. Like I told the Brazilians at that time, don't come here with their history. They are interested in the application of whatever you're bringing here. Now let's take a look at some of the traits of the Brazilian culture. As I mentioned, we are very collectivistic. So we score low in individualism, meaning that we have this focus on our families and friends. That's why we like to work with people that we get along with. We prefer to have somebody that's not that competent, but works well with us, than to have a very competent guy that doesn't work well with us. Relationship based, like I said. So we prefer the trust from the heart style. An example here, let's see if this plays well.
As in many cultures, relationships are key in Brazilian business culture.
If your Brazilian colleague tells you, I'll get the document to you tomorrow, what they're really telling you is that they'll get the document to you someday after today. And your ability to really understand what day that's going to be is going to be dependent upon your relationship with that individual. Building close personal working relationships in all Latin-based cultures is absolutely critical.
So this is how it works. It doesn't matter at this point whether you like it or not. This is the way the culture is, and it is the way we work, okay? So if we want to do business across cultures, we have at least to have this knowledge of how people do things differently. Brazilians take criticism personally. If you criticize a person's job, a person's task, or whatever the guy has done, you're criticizing the person, not the job. So that's why they have a hard time taking criticism. Brazilians have a less direct negative feedback style. Americans are more direct on that. We also use the sandwich approach, but with less bread, I would say, thinner slices of bread. And we have a softer burger as well. So we don't like to give the indirect negative feedback. So we're going to have very little praise. Our criticism is going to be more subtle. And then we might give a little bit of praise at the end as well. It's also the sandwich approach, but it's lighter than the American style. Let's take a look at this as well.
Hey, it's Josh, the Brazilian gringo, and in this video, you're going to learn the one word you should avoid using if you don't want to sound like a rude foreigner to Brazilians. So the word that you should avoid using is não. Brazilians don't come out and tell each other no. When they don't like something or they disagree with someone, they don't just say no. They find a roundabout way of saying no without directly using the word no. So, for example, if someone asks you if you like their new car and you don't like the new car, you don't say, no, your car sucks. You say, oh, it's a cool car, you know, I'm not so sure about the color though. Or, you know, you find a more indirect way of saying no. Or, hey, do you want to go out with me on Friday night? Friday night's complicated. What if we try again for Saturday? So it's really common for foreigners to say no, and Brazilians just aren't like that. They don't directly say no to each other. And if you want to build better relationships with your Brazilians, you should be more careful about your usage of the word no.
Funny, but that's the way it is. Flexible time. Time is flexible, meaning that, like you have already noticed, probably, uh, we are not abiding by the clock all the time. Negotiations, because of that, meetings may take much longer than other cultures are used to.
Another important tip, time is relative.
American concepts of time, deadlines, punctuality, agendas need to be flexible in Brazil. So if you schedule a meeting for 10 a.m., people might not really show up until a few minutes later or many minutes later. And when they do show up, talking about business is not the first thing on the agenda. What they may want to prefer talking about is how the soccer team did the night before, the weather, politics, all sorts of things other than the details that they're at the meeting for.
So you might think, okay, this is a waste of time. We're here to talk about another thing, and these guys are chit-chatting about their soccer teams and everything. Remember that Brazilians are collectivistic. Remember that we have our social lives in the center of our own lives. So this is kind of the grease in the gears of business. We have to do that, and we do that without even thinking. We are very hierarchical, meaning that the companies have a very top-down structure, and management is much less questioned by people at lower ranks, much, much less. But we are extroverted. We love, as a matter of fact, to hug people, and this is a beach down in Brazil. That's the way it is. We don't mind having a couch for 3 people and have 5 people sitting on that couch. The avoid uncertainty. We're not good risk takers. That means that that's going to translate into a little reluctancy and to make decisions and take responsibility. So, okay, we saw the trace. Guys, remember that I'm squeezing in 45 minutes what we could be doing along the whole day. So there's a lot of things that purposely I didn't touch on and I didn't discuss here, okay? This is just to open your appetite for the cross-culture business and the cultural differences between Brazilians and Americans. So let's see how we should be doing business together. We should because we are not all the time. So these are the ways we work differently. Brazilians do business with people. Americans do business with companies. It doesn't matter much if Paulo in safety has died or changed jobs. They're gonna come to Embraer and say, who's in charge now? And they're gonna start doing business right away with that person. Brazilians, we're gonna have a hard time. We're gonna have to travel and get to know that person, shake hands, and have a personal relationship with the new guy before we start doing business with him. Brazilians are more with the high context communication style. Americans have a low context communication. They're direct communicators. Brazilians are more hierarchical. We don't question the titles, the bosses. Americans, you respect hierarchy, but you are more approachable, or your bosses are more approachable to you. Brazilians like to work in group. Americans prefer to split the work inside a group, and everybody does a little piece of the work. Brazilians work to live, Americans live to work, meaning that if you send an email to a Brazilian on Saturday, he's not going to answer on Saturday unless somebody's dying. Americans, no. If you get a message on your cell phone on Saturday, you will want to answer on Saturday or even the day after on Sunday. Time is flexible down in Brazil. Time is money here in the US. So these are the ways we work differently. Take a look at this situation here. People going out for a happy hour, going for some beers. Same situation, but in a different context. Which one is the Brazilian? Which one is the American? By now it's clear, right? Americans, you buy your own beer. Brazilians, you buy beer for everybody, and then it's going to be somebody else's turn to buy beer for you. That's why if you go to Brazil, oh, another thing here, in a setting like this, happy hour, it's okay for the Americans to be sharp on time. You're gonna okay. The thing is gonna be from 1 to 2. The thing is gonna be from 6 to 7 p.m. We're gonna get to the bar at 6, and by 7 p.m. we're gonna get out. Brazilians, yeah, we're gonna go to the bar. If you want to go, you show up there. What time you're gonna leave? I don't know. When the last one decides to leave, we're gonna leave. In the US, it's okay to talk about business. Hey, did you see yesterday's meeting and what Karen did or whatever? In Brazil, we would prefer to talk about other things among Brazilians. And this is how the conversation will go with the Americans because they don't interrupt each other. This is how the conversation goes with the Brazilians because we talk on top of each other. That's why if you go to Brazil and you go to a bar and ask for a beer, you're probably gonna get a big bottle like this. That's very common because beer was something that was made to be shared with friends. We are a collectivist society. There are some cultural subsets I'm not going to talk about here. We don't have time for this, but the corporate culture is one of the subsets. So there are differences between GE and General Motors here in the West, for instance. They have two different corporate cultures, but we're not going to have time to touch on this today. And some hints on how Brazilians should be doing business with the Americans. So my Brazilian friends, pay attention to this. And if you're an American, see what I tell the Brazilians that they should do. So respect times and schedules. Doesn't matter whether your culture is flexible with time or not. Americans are not flexible, so show up on time. Respect privacy and personal space. Firm handshake, keeping eye contact and everything. Avoid interrupting somebody who's speaking. So these are the things that I tell the Brazilians if they want to do good business with the Americans. Meetings start with a small talk about sports, weather, but this talk is much faster and much more, I would say, professional than what we do down in Brazil. And the end time of the meetings as or more important than the starting time. Time is money, so try to link whatever you're bringing to the return that the other person is going to have. Don't try and tell them your whole story, your life. Don't take criticism personally. Don't overreact to criticism that other people make about you. And say please and thank you. The Brazilians don't say please and thank you as much as the Americans do. Why? Because if you're in a social environment and any business becomes a social environment at the end of the day, we don't feel the need to say please and thank you as much as you guys do. When receiving a request, acknowledge the receipt. Sometimes you, an American, you ask somebody down in Brazil to do something for you, to look for any piece of information or something, and you never hear from the guy until the guy finds the information. So I tell the Brazilians, hey, tell them I'm on it. I'll do this for you. So they know that you listened and received the message. And be aware that Americans have a sort of a cultural blindness. It doesn't matter whether the person recognizes that you are from a different culture. 5 minutes later, the American will expect you to do business just like they do in the US, whether they're in the US or anywhere in the world. So that's another trace of the American culture. You are aware of other cultures, but for 10 minutes, then you forget about it. Now, I think most of you guys are Americans. Let's see how you should be doing business with Brazilians. Handshakes, same thing. Remember that women may kiss women, men don't kiss men. Please don't do it. At least with me. You might try with other people, not me. Be relaxed about time. Time is flexible down in Brazil. If you're traveling to Brazil, of course, if you're doing business virtually on a conference call or something, you're not gonna face all the hurdles that you're gonna face if you were in Brazil. But if you have to travel to Brazil and do business with Brazilians, you're gonna have to be patient because they are flexible with their time. And you're gonna expect you have to expect to be interrupted. That doesn't mean that the guy is impolite or anything. It's just the way we do things. But we like to please and we like to be liked. If you're too stiff and formal, people in Brazil are not gonna know how to react to you. So you gotta be a little more relaxed, even in business, down in Brazil than here in the US. We love socializing, so if you have a chance to go to a coffee break or a dinner or a lunch or whatever with a Brazilian, go. Don't talk about a business, please. So expect a lot of time to spend a lot of time getting to know your Brazilian counterpart because before you start doing business, you're gonna be more productive that way. So you're gonna be on top of the guy's priority list when you need something from him. Avoid focusing the conversation on how Americans do business. If you're abroad, if you're here in the US, of course you expect your Brazilian counterpart to do business like Americans do. But if you're abroad, avoid focusing the conversation on how you do business here. Do not discuss business during meals, like I said. We hate that. Meetings are generally informal. You're gonna have to spend a lot of time talking about the details because we are low risk takers, so we need to know all the details. You're gonna again be interrupted, and do not appear frustrated to our Brazilian colleagues. Don't publicly criticize your Brazilian counterpart because Brazilians don't take criticism well, I would say. Giving feedback, avoid the sandwich approach, and use simplified English. If you're talking to a Brazilian counterpart down in Brazil, even if you're doing it virtually, try to use the simplest English possible because sometimes there are some things that don't translate well. I remember one of my bosses, and it took me a lot of time to explain to him that when Americans say at the end of the day, they don't mean at the end of today. It's just a way of saying sometime in the future. At the end of the day, we're gonna get this done. It doesn't mean that we're gonna have to get it done today. So avoid using this kind of dubious expressions. The work style, if you have a task that has to be done in 3 steps and you have a group of Brazilians, they're gonna work like this. They're gonna move to step number 2, step number 3, and they're gonna deliver the result. The Americans are gonna do like this. They will split the work. You do 1, I do 2, and he does 3. And at the end of the day, we're gonna deliver the results. There is no right or wrong. There is the way we like to work. So if you have a task and most of the team are gonna be made of Brazilians, try to use the solution on top. If your group has more Americans than Brazilians, it's okay to split the job inside the group, okay? Try and look for a mediator for your cultural communications in this company. This mediator might be somebody that's been living here in the US, a Brazilian that has been living here in the US for a long time, a person that you know well and that knows the American culture, Brazilian that knows the American culture. It might be an American that has already worked with Brazilians a lot, has lived in Brazil or something, but try to find somebody to help you with the cross-cultural communication. It's useful. You're gonna do better business this way. How you should adapt yourself in this thing. First, you have to understand the differences and your own culture. You gotta map your own culture. That's your personal comfort zone. Then you're gonna identify the other culture. That's the zone of appropriateness, as we call it. And you're gonna have to learn to accommodate your behavior without losing yourself in the process. What I ask is that you just move from from the center of your comfort zone a little bit. You don't need to be in the other culture. You just need to be transparent to the other culture. Again, if it doesn't hurt you, if if it doesn't offend you, then you can adapt, okay? If you do this well, you're gonna get a good business cross culture. There are some minefields in this thing, of course. There's always a minefield. If you look at other people doing something and you try to adapt, you might risk going into the pendulum effect, meaning that you might try to adapt and you overreact, you over switch, meaning that the end result is going to be as bad as if you hadn't done anything in the very beginning. Like I said, Brazilians like this hugging thing. If you get down to Brazil and you start hugging everybody, at some point that's going to be inconvenient. So you got to learn little by little what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. So your adaptation has to be slow and careful, so not to over switch. And this is for everything: the way you give feedback, the way you have your high or low context communication, the way you respect or you don't respect the personal space, overlapping speech, everything. So you gotta be careful when you're trying to change anything in your behavior. The path in cultural assimilation, cross-cultural assimilation, goes through a scale like this. First, you start in denial. I don't need about this thing. Paulo brought just BS to this training. Then you go to the defense. Okay, I know that there are two different cultures, but these Brazilians are crazy. They're just weirdos. So that's the defense. You're trying to defend your own culture. Then comes the minimization. Yeah, we're all the same inside. We're all people. We're all trying to do the same thing. No, not quite. Then comes the acceptance. I'm curious about other cultures. It's hard to say who is right and who is wrong because there's no right or wrong, right? It's just different. Then comes the adaptation, when you learn to understand the other culture and you're able to empathize with them and feel the same way. This is my stage. I'm not going to get into the integration because this is for people that, like my kids, they are born in the US from a Brazilian culture. So for them, it's just a switch in their brain. They just click the switch and they go from one culture to the other. If you stop in the acceptance or adaptation, you're great. You're in the right place to do business. So guys, questions that you should ask yourselves from this point on. Do you understand your own cultural background and conditioning? Do you approach cross-cultural communication with an awareness of how differences may affect communication? Do you have this attitude, or did you have this attitude that difference is bad, inferior, or wrong? I expect you not to have this anymore. Are you aware of ways that you are stereotyping others, saying, oh, these guys are crazy, these guys are a bunch of weirdos, or these guys are lazy because they do this or that? And the burning question here, are you willing to adjust your communication behavior in order to be more effective? That's up to you. If you're not willing to adapt, if you're not willing to move yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone, it's going to be a hard thing to do, to adapt to another culture. This is going to take time. This is not done overnight. So expect to read a lot, expect to observe a lot. Cultural expertise is a powerful, very powerful tool in today's global environment. So you can almost manipulate people. You shouldn't do it, but if you wanted, you could manipulate people just knowing how their culture works. So I don't suggest anybody tries to manipulate anybody, but this is very powerful. And if you know the cultural thing, you're gonna do good business. 5 steps for you. First, you're getting the awareness. That's what you got today and Friday. Next, I expect you to study. Get one of those books, read them. Then start observing. Watch your peers in the industry. Go watch YouTube videos or whatever. Then practice little by little, step by step, baby steps. And at the end of the day, if you do everything right, you have learned how to do business across cultures. Recap, total recap now. Brain wiring, there's no right or wrong, there's different. We are a pattern, we're not the same. Looks can deceive, careful with that. Communication is key. You have these tools to assess differences, so use them. This has a strong impact on business. We didn't talk much about corporate differences, corporate culture differences. try to mirror yourself in the other culture. Don't fake, don't pretend you're somebody else. Just adjust your colors to be better seen by the other side. Move, don't fake. Again, respect your own culture. If it hurts you or if it offends you, don't do it. But if you can, try and adapt. Caution when you're trying to adapt. Go with baby steps, like I said, and understand that this is really powerful. If you do everything right, you're going to be able to work together and keep this company profitable and our jobs secure. Questions? Sorry, I took a little more time today. It's almost 1 hour. It's 1 hour, in fact.
We're right on the 1 hour mark there.
Yeah, right on the 1 hour. But I couldn't go any faster than this. If I wanted to touch on the
it's all good information. I'm amazed how you were able to take, because I've seen the 3 hour, and I'm amazed how you were able to put it all together. So wonderful job, Paulo. Hey, everybody, we have just a minute or two for questions. So if you have a question for Paulo, what I'd like for you to do is use the chat. So for those of you that have not used Teams before, just at the top, you've got the little, looks like a word bubble or a little comic book bubble. Just click that and type in your question. I'm checking the questions now. So if you have a question for Paulo, go ahead, type it in, and I can ask for you, since I think we've got about 40 people on the call today, Paulo.
Nice.
Yeah, very nice.
And I don't know if you mentioned this, Chris, but you're going to be sending the handout as well, right?
I just hit the send button. I was going to mention that you might want to share with them what's in the handout.
In the handout, you have a summary of everything we saw or everything we should have seen during the whole training. At the end, at the very bottom of the handout, there's my email address. Feel free to drop me an email with whatever question you have, and I'm going to do my best to try and answer them, okay? If you don't have time, or if you don't want to place the question right here, right now, you can send me an email later, no problem.
Awesome. Yeah, and I just hit the send button, so everyone, you're getting the handout that Paul was talking about, and I also sent you the link to the survey, because we'd love to hear your feedback. As always, we want to know what you think about this one, and get ideas for the future. So we do have one comment, not a question, but a comment, Paulo, and that's from Sarah Lugo. And she says, Paulo, great presentation. Love the differences between cultures. You are so right about them. That's good to know. And I
hope this is just the beginning, guys. I hope this pandemic goes away and we can get back together in a room and have at least 3 or 4 hours to talk about, discuss, and exchange ideas on how to do business across cultures.
Yeah. And Cindy Mendoza says, great presentation. This should be mandatory for everyone in the organization. And I wholeheartedly agree with you on that one. I think that we should definitely have something about cross-cultural awareness. I think this is just really fascinating information, just to think about how, how we can work together, even though we have, we come from 2 different cultures. That doesn't mean that we can't work together.
Yeah, and I'm a little biased on this, but I fully agree with Cindy. I would love to make this. This is not my job. My job is to investigate accidents with airplanes. But there's so much value in this that I couldn't just keep this knowledge outside of the company. That's why I wanted to bring it and spread it inside the company. I think the company is failing not having a solid program to train ourselves and the guys down in Brazil in this cross-cultural thing. They are fixing that. I see that they have hired some consultancies down in Brazil, and they are starting to do trainings like this down there, which I think is great. I've been keep insisting to them to do that, like for 5 years at least.
Yeah, well, definitely we'll keep up on that one. So, well, it is 4 minutes after the hour. It looks like we don't have any other questions, Paulo. But like Paulo said, if you do have other questions that come up in your mind, please shoot him an email. Check out that handout. His information is in there. Send him an email, or if you want to, send me an email. I'll work with Paulo to get you the answer. So everyone, thank you all for being a part of this. Paulo, thank you for this amazing information. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, and have a happy holiday, everybody.
Have a great holiday, everybody, and see you next time.
Bye all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.